6:15, 1320 WILS. It's the 21st century, and while everyone's looking for the new app and all the new gadgets to get ahead, my next guest says the real answers are really in the past. Jim Whidden with us. He's the author of the book, The Old School Advantage, Timeless Tools for Every Generation. Jim, great to have you on WILS.
Oh, pleased to be with you. Thank you.
When you say old school, how old are we talking?
We're talking about going all the way back, centuries-old principles that are still remembered because they work. However, in our ubiquitous society where there's this tyranny of rectangles all around us, electronic rectangles I'm talking about, a lot of those tried and true old-school techniques and wisdom have been forgotten. So I'm trying to bring them back, quite simply.
Well, give me an example of one.
Well, for example, short-term memory. The ancient Greeks developed ways to remember short lists of 10 to 15 items so that you might be able to look someone in the eye as you're telling them about a particular product or service or describing somewhere they should be going, or even a grocery list.
So how does that help us if we can just look at our phone and get the information?
Because you lose eye contact. Eyes, as you know, are the windows to the soul, and the more eye contact you can make, the greater connection you can make. You know, here we are in this world of connectivity. We've never been more disconnected, in my opinion.
So, I mean, what's the difference? Let's say you're chatting with somebody online, typing back and forth versus looking them in the eye. What's so different between the two in your view?
Well, you have simply less of a connection. In other words, there are gradations of connection. So a text has very little connection with somebody in most cases. An email has a little bit more because you can put more into it and be more descriptive, more words and characters. Then when you get on the telephone, you hear their voice and you hear tonation. Then when you're face-to-face, as I mentioned, you can look into their eyes. And probably the most powerful way to communicate is a handwritten letter because it is so unique. Your handwriting's different than anyone else's, and if you take time to put it down, you really connect. So it has to do with the gradation of connectivity, personal connectivity.
Jim Whidden with us. The book is The Old School Advantage. Find him at theoldschooladvantage.com. Okay, give me another advantage. What's another advantage of using some of these centuries-old techniques?
Well, let's take words, for example. Words are powerful, and they mean things. And today there are so many words that are overused. The word awesome, for example, or the word like, or so, or yeah. These are words that are just fillers, and they've lost their meaning because they're used so often. So the first step is to scrub your vocabulary of those, and then to use old-school words like, for example, here's a phrase, first things first. That tells someone that you're organized, you're a sequential thinker, you're not going to get ahead of yourself, you're going to do it right, and those things are all communicated through the simple phrase of first things first. So we teach 30 words and phrases after we scrub a vocabulary that will put power into your vocabulary with an old school feel, and the idea is that people, no matter your age, are going to look at you and you say, you know, that guy or that lady is wiser than their years. And to me, that's the greatest compliment you can get, especially for young people.
What do you think when you meet a typical millennial nowadays then?
Well, I hate, first of all, I think this millennial generation, I think they get a bad rap. I think they have just as much capability of being the greatest generation as the greatest generation was. The problem is they're so distracted. And so when I meet a typical millennial, to use your phrase, I find somebody that's distracted and really has relationships by the hundreds that are an inch deep and a mile wide instead of 3 or 4 close friends like maybe I had when I was a young fellow.
How do I mean, they grew up in a very different world than you did, and you know, I did in many ways. So how do you really turn back the hands of time, would you say?
I wouldn't say it's turning back the hands of time. I think it's just teaching them these principles and techniques. I would say they have an even greater opportunity now because of the gap is so wide between those that will continue to depend on technology and those that will go back to a previous time and say, you know what, I'm going to get some of those interpersonal communication skills that are going to set me apart.
Okay, but in a way, though, if you are dealing with these interpersonal skills as you're describing them, are you going to be different and maybe odd to a millennial that's just constantly distracted?
We have not found that to be the case. In fact, we've found that when we teach millennials these principles, you may be surprised to know that they really enjoy them, and they love the whole concept of the old school. They might use retro as a different term, but they're into that. They like the idea of being able to stand out, particularly young professionals in business or those coming right out of college looking for their first job. I mean, you want to impress someone in an interview, it makes you stand out, and they quickly realize that.
Yeah. Do you think some of them are just addicted to the technology?
Oh, there's no question. Yeah, the overwhelming majority are addicted. But again, we're talking about the exceptional. We're talking about the extraordinary young people in this generation breaking out of that. It doesn't mean they can't use it. The problem is they're overusing it and they're abusing it. And so we want them to use it properly because they're great tools. I use them all the time. I'm looking at my iPad as we speak.
I still can't figure out how they prefer to text than talk. It seems there's so much gets lost. But I guess their perspective is they feel that it's better somehow. How do you make sense of that?
I think they feel it's better because it's so expedient. It's so easy to use. And so, that's well and good.
But they almost feel protected by it, I get a sense,
I think that's true as well. And that gets back to the connectivity. So, a young person that can really connect with the generation above them is going to go places.
Jim Whidden? Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah.
If they would.
It. Thank you.
That's it, Jim Whidden. The book, The Old School Advantage, Timeless Tools for Every Generation, theoldschooladvantage.com. Jim Whidden on WILS. Jim, thanks.
It's been my pleasure.